So Vinesh, thank you very much for making time to share your insights into the future of manufacturing. But before we go into the future, can you tell us a little bit about your own background? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in Durban, been in KZN most of my life.
And tell me, what was your dream career when you grew up?
Funnily enough, I always wanted to be an engineer. I didn't technically know what that was when I was very young, but I was always taking things apart, particularly electronic devices like the hi-fi and the recorder and all sorts of things, my toys. So I got into a lot of trouble with my family about that, particularly my parents. But yeah, that gave me the insight into how things worked. And from there, I figured out I love to understand how to engineer and make new things. And when I got to high school, I loved my maths and science. So it was quite a logical choice then to go into engineering.
So you studied engineering at the University of KZN, right?
Yes. It was called University of Natal, Howard College campus in those days. And I did electronic engineering there, BSc.
Okay, now before we go into your career, can you quickly tell us who inspired you in your early days?
Well, I'm quite self-motivated because I'm a perfectionist. So it's like how you play golf against yourself. That's what I do. I play against myself and compete with myself to become a better version of myself tomorrow. So that's what keeps me motivated and trying to get to where I can be. But my mom has always been there to support me, even though she had very little education throughout my primary school, high school, and university. She was always there backing me, pushing me to be the best I can be.
And tell us, Vinesh, where did you start your career?
I started off working for Ilovo Sugar as an engineer in training. This was in 1995, which is obviously a very interesting time in South Africa's history. And I was located at a Pongola sugar mill, which is in far northern KZN on the Swaziland border. So yeah, interesting enough, I was the only Indian person in the town in 1995 and at the sugar mill.
In Pongola?
Yes.
Okay, so you were in charge of production, or what exactly was your portfolio?
So I was in charge of industrial automation. So I started as an engineer in training. I worked in the instrumentation department, but as part of the engineering training program, you had to work in production. So I did shift work. I did standby as an engineer, standby as a foreman to understand the full sugar manufacturing process. I also worked in the different departments like in electrical workshops, the riggers and fitters and turners and all sorts of stuff to get a holistic understanding of everything that goes into supporting manufacturing apart from the actual process itself.
So Vinesh, where did you go from Ilovo?
So I worked there for 11 years, and then after 2.5 years, I was promoted to an engineer at the Pongola Sugar Mill. Then a year later, I was transferred to head office, where I started doing projects all over Southern Africa, all the way up to Tanzania, Malawi, Mozambique, etc. Then in 2002, I started my MBA because I liked the finance side of product management when I got into it, and then I eventually went to program management at Ilovo Sugar. And I completed that in 2006. In securitization in the banking industry was a very interesting topic at that point in time because we didn't have a 2008 crash, so nobody knew about securitization at that point in time. And then at that point, once I completed the MBA, I had no more room to grow within the Ilovo corporate structure. And I left in 2006 to join a very small business called Cube Technologies. And they were a struggling entity, but I wanted to use my MBA and practice all my business knowledge in a real setting. So I had to take a big pay cut because I went from a large corporate to a small business, but that really gave me the impetus for the rest of my career.
And what is it that you learned there that was instrumental in furthering your career?
Well, I was appointed as a general manager, so I went straight from a senior control and instrumentation engineer to the general manager of a system integration business. We did automation for a number of different companies. So there, I had to do every aspect of a small business. So we had to generate the sales, we had to execute the projects, we had to collect the money, we had to manage the creditors, the debtors, everything, plus manage the staff. And so it enabled me to use every aspect of my MBA, all the way from marketing to all the HR aspects, plus all the financial aspects. As I said, that business was in all sorts of trouble. They were almost bankrupt. So I took a leap of faith by joining them. We won a big tender after about 6 months. I had to first fix up the whole structure of administration in that business, because admin wasn't very well organized. There were lots of gaps. I sorted all that out. Then we got the teams aligned. So I had to use all my people skills, and thereafter could really execute the work profitably. And then we grew that business. We doubled the turnover for the next 2 years successfully. And then, yeah, it then plateaued after 2008's crash. And yeah, it kept on being steady. It went from like 3 million rand turnover to 20 million rand within 3 years.
Gee, so you have a unique combination of being a sales guru and an engineering expert. Am I right?
I wouldn't say a sales guru, but yes, people trust me. And when you trust somebody, then you'll do business with them. Integrity is very important, and I keep my promises. I'm extremely reliable. So I built up strong relationships over the years. And that's why when I was running that business, I could go back to people who knew me in industry, because they knew that if they did business with me, I would deliver based on my reputation.
And then I believe from Cube, you went to a big company called Royal Haskoning.
Correct. So at Cube, I had to leave there in 2012 because I wanted to grow the business more aggressively and move into the public sector, but the leadership and the owners were relocating to Australia, and they weren't really prepared to invest any further in South Africa. And I'm very ambitious, so 20 million rand a year turnover was not good enough for me. So yes, I got hired by the Dutch consulting company, and I became a consulting engineer. It was a very interesting time then, because the month after I joined, it was called SSI originally, and they were owned by DHV. But then the two Dutch companies decided to merge, and then it became Royal Haskoning DHV. And my immediate manager went away to Europe for 4 months to be part of the merger team. So I had no manager for the first 4 months of my working career in Royal Haskoning. No. But I set about fixing it. I'm an engineer, so instead of fixing technical problems, I started fixing the business problems there. I was asked to come in and reinvigorate the industrial electronics business, and went about that just to the support of the general manager, who was based in a different office. And within the first 3 months or so, we've had won back the trust of the other departments, and the business started growing because we started doing work at the right standard. The standard had slipped for a while, and people were not happy.
And I believe then you joined a global market leader, and you became director of sales and marketing.
Yes, so I was very active in the industry. I was the president of the Society for Automation, Instrumentation, Measurement and Control. And because of that, we had interactions with all the MDs of the variety of industrial automation companies in South Africa. And then the MD of Yokogawa, Johan Low, he liked what I had to say in a variety of meetings. And then he approached me to become the sales and marketing director when they were reorganizing the business. And I really liked that opportunity because it helped once again. It was another business that needed to have a step change in its performance. And I love sales and marketing in particular. And yeah, we got together. He had a nice vision that I bought into over the next 5 years. And we went about tackling that business, and immediately we got 30% year-on-year growth in the first 2 years, and then it plateaued to about 10%. But I had a strong team that I assembled below me to support all that growth and development. I strongly believe that you cannot do everything on your own. You need to have the support of people, and you pick the right people, and you'll have a winning formulation.
Now, Vinesh, today you're in charge of smart manufacturing at PwC. Can you tell us a little bit about what does that entail?
So basically, what PwC recognized what there's a gap in the market in South Africa. Globally, PwC is a leader in the smart manufacturing business, which is applying the industrial Internet of Things technologies to the manufacturing environment. We've transformed multiple businesses across Europe and America, and they've got lots of financial benefits thereof. But in South Africa, as you know, we've been deindustrializing for the last 25 years, and because of we've been uncompetitive. So the gap is where with smart manufacturing, we can help South African manufacturing become globally competitive again using the latest technologies, because there's been a severe lack of investment in local manufacturing over the last 25 years.
Right. And Vinesh, looking back over your career, would you say there was a major turning point or maybe a number of turning points?
Well, Cube Technologies was the major turning point, because I transitioned from just being an engineer and a project manager to being a business leader. And I learned a lot of lessons. I made lots of mistakes because it was my first job. I was not supervised. The owners were sitting in Australia, but I cut my teeth there. I did what I wanted to do. I applied all my MBA knowledge, because I like to apply any knowledge gained. I don't believe having knowledge and not applying it is valuable. You might as well not do the training. So they, by growing that business, it put me on the radar amongst all my peers. And then I also got the sales experience, which then put me into good stead for the other opportunities that came up later with Royal Ascona, Yokogawa, etc.
So Vinesh, what is driving you today?
Today, I'm driven by the sad state of South Africa's manufacturing. It is very, very sad how we've come to where we are compared to how we were before 1995.
No.
And it's purely because the markets opened up, and I don't think we continued innovating. We got too used to buying things. It became cheaper to buy stuff from overseas. And that's what I want to reverse. I'm passionate about manufacturing. Manufacturing is a big multiplier in the job creation equation. We know we got massive unemployment in South Africa. So if we get our manufacturing right, we'll get more people into the middle classes. And by getting more people in the middle classes, we'll have a more stable economy. So that's what's driving me, is to make South Africa better by having a stronger manufacturing base and improving the quality of life of the people employed in that manufacturing base.
Right now, how do you see the future of manufacturing in South Africa, and what are the changes that you foresee?
Well, we have to change a lot in South Africa if we can maintain and not continue to deindustrialize. So for the short term, there will be pockets of excellence. There's already quite a few examples of those companies who back themselves. They saw that the South African economy, the market is too small for the products, and they cannot be competitive. They went overseas, found customers, made very big promises to them, came back, delivered those promises using the latest technology, and now they're very successful businesses, to the point where the South African portion of their business is maybe even 5% of what their overall business is. You're going to get those companies that are now the running at the edge of the envelope and the innovators, and then the rest of them are going to follow. They're going to be forced to follow, or you have to shut down. In our work at PwC, we've been speaking to many CEOs of South African manufacturing companies, and always the conversation is, are they shut down this plant because the Chinese are importing it so much cheaper that I cannot compete with them? And this will continue to happen. If you look at the number of warehouses that are coming up along all our highways, it's a very bad sign for our manufacturing. So everybody will have to be forced to either step up, improve their technology, become more efficient, become more profitable, and become globally competitive, or go out of business. So I think South African manufacturing will choose the former, and they will all jump on the bandwagon of the new technologies, because there's been such a lack of investment. You have to now start investing, and it's actually, we can leapfrog. This term leapfrog is not very popular with me, but in the South African context, because of the lack of investment, I think that is an apt term, where we can now apply the latest technologies and get the competitive advantage. Because our overseas competitors are already adopting these technologies, and if we do not keep up with that, we'll be further relegated into the doldrums of manufacturing.
And Vinesh, what have you learned from your own journey, your own leadership journey, that you consider most important for building future manufacturing leaders?
You have to be authentic. You have to have a vision. If you don't have those two, nobody's going to take you seriously and you won't get buy-in. So by authenticity, I mean that you have to walk the talk. And whatever you say, people must know that you are going to deliver on that. So I'll give you an example. When I was elected the president of the SAIMC, the Society for Automation, Instrumentation, Measurement and Control in 2012, when I moved up here to Johannesburg, I had a vision because that organization had become stagnant. It had become an all boys club and it was not attractive to the youth. Had it continued like that, it would have died because it was not attracting any new blood. So I had a vision to taking it forward. It was considering changing the culture, changing the logo, the whole operational structure, etc. But I managed to sell this vision to the volunteers across the country. There were a lot of difficult conversations because changing the logo and the fundamental identity of this organization, which was 60 years old at that point, was obviously quite challenging for the longest standing members. But once they understood the objective was for the best interest of the organization and to make sure it survives for another 60 years, they all bought in. And because they bought in, it was a successful transition. And by 2013, we had a reinvigorated organization. That organization has now become very, very active in all the highest circles, talking to government, a variety of industry bodies, etc. So it was mission accomplished because I said I had a vision, I sold it to the people, I kept to my word, I did not make any false promises, and that's what you need to do. There's too many people out there who are selling smoke and mirrors. People want somebody they can trust, and a manufacturing leader needs to be somebody who can be trusted based on their past deeds and their current actions.
So Vinesh, I believe this is the South African Society for Automation, Instrumentation, Measurement and Control, right?
Well, it used to be the South African Society for Instrumentation, Measurement and Control, but we rebranded it to the Society for Automation, Instrumentation, Measurement and Control because automation had become quite topical and the organization was losing relevance by just being stuck in the instrumentation, measurement and control paradigm.
Right. Now, when you speak to future manufacturing leaders, what are the biggest challenges that you advise them they could encounter and that maybe you have encountered in your own career, in your manufacturing career?
So the biggest thing of manufacturing is that it doesn't have the deep pockets of like maybe financial services and other industries. So they are very, very careful in what investments they make. So if you want to improve technology or improve production in any particular way, there's always going to be a very, very difficult road ahead of you to justify it. There's particularly when in my career as an automation engineer, you're competing against the big budgets of the mechanical engineers and the electrical engineers for what they think is mission critical for the sugar mill to operate or whatever large plant we're trying to automate. And that is the biggest challenge. You have to have a very strong business case. You have to be able to say what value this will bring to the bottom line. And that is something I had to learn through my MBA. And that's why I joined PwC, because that is what we do on a day-to-day basis now, is to show manufacturing leaders how, by improving their production facilities, by implementing technology, how it can make a big difference to their bottom line. So the business case must be there. You cannot do technology for technology's sake, but you also have to be aware that investment is limited. So you have to be very practical in what you do and do things in bite-sized chunks and manage your risk that way. You have to take some risk because if you're going to do cutting-edge stuff, there will always be risk, but you don't have to bet the entire business on it. Do it in bite-sized chunks and you will get the successes, and there will be failures, but failure is a stepping stone to the next success.
Right. And Vinesh, if you were to design a curriculum for future manufacturing leaders, what are the skills that you would want to factor in?
So people skills are key. Even though I'm in the automation business, you cannot do without people. People are the key enabler. You have to be able to win them over, win their hearts and their minds, hearts most importantly, and as Dale Carnegie gets, get their willing cooperation. So that's the first thing. We as engineers and technical people normally aren't very strong on people skills. Secondly, they will also need to understand the business skills. That's why as an engineer, I did my MBA. And apart from understanding the business side of things, you must understand the commercial side of things because everything has to make commercial sense. So my curriculum would be a lot about entrepreneurship and the technical skills, but the technical skills I would put in is the current latest skills. The current educational system we have, particularly at universities, does not ready one for the world of work. You have to do what I did 20 years ago, 25 years ago now, where you have to be trained by an organization to get the skills to apply the knowledge you learned at university. Because skills is experience plus knowledge. And you can't have a university degree and then go and work in a sugar mill or any other plant from day one. So I'm advocating for a more piecemeal type approach, a modular approach where you follow what has happened in the German system, which I'm sure you're familiar with, where you work for a period of time and then you study for a period of time and you do that within the same year. And so you get the practical working experience, plus you get the theoretical knowledge. And that makes you a much more well-rounded individual when you finish your qualification, because you can enter the world of work and start adding value from day one without somebody having to spend money investing in training you. Because currently, particularly in the South African economy, finances are very tight. So companies will be very prudent about who they invest in. And with the youth nowadays being very mobile, a lot of companies have been burnt because they've invested in people who then suddenly leave them after they've acquired the skills because somebody else has offered them 10% more in salary. So it's a double-edged sword we have to sort out in South Africa by fixing the education system to become fit for the 21st century.
And Vinesh, when you speak to future manufacturing leaders, what is it you tell them about social media? How should they handle and navigate social media to build their own leadership brand?
Yeah, well, as you well know, social media can be very, very dangerous, but it's also a fantastic tool. So what you put out in social media will be there for years, so you have to be very careful what you want to put out. Secondly, you need to create a social media identity. You cannot be all things to all people. So pick your niche or area of interest and publish information about that area, so people then know when they get posts from you, it's relevant to that particular area. And then you won't be like spamming them with all sorts of information. So if you look at my LinkedIn posts, it's very focused on smart manufacturing and related topics, the future of work, etc. There's lots of content I get which I don't share because it's not really relevant to my focus area, and the people who follow me, we're probably not going to be interested in that, or they can follow somebody else to get more detailed information about those subjects. So be very, very specific about what you're going to share, so you carve out that identity. And that's the thing about social media. I strongly believe that you have to give to get. So share your knowledge, share your experience with other people, help them solve their problems, and with time, you will get the rewards. People will come back to you for advice. They may even engage you in services that you could benefit from. But you must first give to get.
Right. And talking about COVID-19, how do you believe this new situation is changing, will change the local manufacturing landscape?
It's going to change it forever, fundamentally. This is not going to be the last pandemic we experience. We know SARS, then there was MERS, and now we've got COVID, and it's going to continue because of the way we are treating the environment. And we have to now make sure manufacturing is prepared for this, for the next one that comes. We cannot be completely disabled. So I think there'll be a strong drive towards more automation, because automation-related industries will not have to be shut down if the majority of the work is being done by machines, and the people are spread far apart who supervise the machines. There's also going to be the other aspect of it, where is we have to use technology to make sure the working places are safe. So we have to be like infrared scanners to measure people's temperatures before they enter the working place, and then almost quarantine them should they have a high temperature or a fever or whatever it might be, like they do at the airports. We'll also look at temperature, surfaces, and how people will ensure that the surfaces are not infected because of these viruses, because no matter how many controls you put in place, there'll always be some sort of a gap that could result in infection coming through. So the world of work is going to change fundamentally. More technology application, more risk management, and I think more automation.
Now, Vinesh, as a mentor to future leaders, can you maybe share a success story when you mentored an upcoming leader and that person took your advice to heart?
Yes, so I've been working with Joshua, who I met through my wife in 2012. So he was working for one of the large state-owned entities, and he wasn't quite sure with his career because the guidance wasn't very clear. And he's a very bright young man. And at that point, he was interested in artificial intelligence, which is way ahead of his time. But his career was going nowhere at that point in time. So I then assisted him, and we decided that he should actually go to Japan and do a two-year degree in Japan. And when he was very skeptical initially because it was going to be such a disruptive thing to his life. But because his situation was such in the current organization he was working at, he had really nothing to lose. And my advice to him was this opportunity in Japan was going to really be a difference, because he's going to give him a worldview. He'll be exposed to international counterparts, and that'll just give him a bigger picture of what's happening around the world. So when he comes back, he can apply that to South Africa. So he took it up and he went and he did very well over there. And he then came back and he built models for forecasting all sorts of things regarding contracts and machine breakdowns. Then he got promoted to the technical lead for machine learning and engineering. And currently he's now doing his doctorate. So he's done very well over the years, and he's comes from a very simple background, from one of the very rural areas, but he's absolutely passionate about learning. He reads profusely, about 52 books a year.
Wow.
And he's, I'm very proud of his achievements, because he moved from being a very confused person to having a very laser focus now on what he wants to achieve, how he wants to achieve it, and which organizations can help him achieve his goals.
Vinesh, are there any role models of leadership that you would recommend future manufacturing leaders should study and maybe learn from?
Yeah, well, my personal favorite is like Richard Branson, because if you look at how he started from scratch, but he had the tenacity, but he's always people orientated. He likes putting people first. If you look at his quotes about hiring smart people and letting them tell you what to do, about how you treat your people well so that they will treat your customers well, these are all kind of things that resonate with me. Nelson Mandela is obviously one of the role models for any South African because of his patience. I'm not a very patient person. I'm working on that myself. And his forgiveness, because without him and those characteristics, South Africa will not be where it is today. Then we look at Steve Jobs. He also was creating technology that customers did not even know they wanted. He created markets. He changed and destabilized things. He was our first disruptor. And I would like to be like him, anticipate the needs of the market before they even know. And that inspires me. And finally, there's a guru by the name of Swami A.C. Bhaktivedanta Prabhupada, who is, at the age of 69 years old, went across the ocean from India to the US, and he started a worldwide movement in 1967. And over 12 years, he traversed the world about 18 times. And he started all of this with $6 in his pocket. And he is the epitome of perseverance and servant leadership. That's something that's also very strong with me, is as a leader, you are a servant to your followers. You cannot just sit in an ivory tower and give out commands. You have to work with them and support them when required and serve them when required as well. Unfortunately, nowadays, leadership seems to be a situation where I instruct and you will do, and that is not very constructive, and that's causing most of the problems we have currently in our organizational structures.
Now, Vinesh, how can our listeners connect with you and where should they follow you?
You can follow me on LinkedIn, Vinesh Maharaj. You'll find me there. You'll also find me on Facebook, but Facebook is more for my own private matters, where you'll see I'm an advocate for vegetarianism and veganism, etc.,
Yeah.
and protecting the planet. But from a business point of view, LinkedIn is the best place to follow me.
And last but not least, Vinesh, is there one piece of advice that you would like to convey to future manufacturing leaders that they should implement in their own leadership?
Yes, be authentic. That's all I can say. Be true to yourself, stick to your principles, and you'll be successful, no matter how tough it gets.
Well, Vinesh, thank you so much for sharing your insights and your nuggets of wisdom from your illustrious career and your insights into manufacturing in the future. And may I wish you all the best.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nick. It was a pleasure talking to you today.